Okay, so, wow, you really weren't kidding about a deep dive into the Joe Rogan Experience. I mean, 2,469 episodes and over 6,524 hours of content. That's like a lot of Joe Rogan.
It's a lot, yeah.
But hey, don't worry, we're not just going to do like, Joe Rogan 101 here. We're going to unpack how this whole thing went from like just guys chatting to this podcasting empire.
Yeah, it really is more than just, I mean, it's obviously a popular podcast, but it's really become this kind of cultural force. And the thing is, it all started back in 2009. And back then, podcasting was still pretty new. I mean, Rogan was already famous, obviously, but it wasn't like this big, slick production or anything. It was literally just him and his buddy, Brian Redban, hanging out, recording their conversations.
You know what I love about that? It's so relatable. Like, it wasn't about fancy studios or perfect sound. It was just the conversation,
Totally. It was all about the conversation.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big part of why it clicked with so many people.
Absolutely.
It felt real, And you can see that kind of informality, like woven into the show's DNA as it evolved. Even when they moved to a studio in L.A., things got more professional. But they held on to that casual conversational feel.
Oh, and speaking of that LA studio, we have to talk about the werewolf statue. It's like iconic JRE, right? And I think it says a lot about the show's whole vibe. It's serious discussion, but then there's this laid-back, quirky atmosphere.
It is. It's really become this sort of visual symbol.
Yeah.
And you're right. I think it embodies that unexpected mix you get with JRE. You could be talking about, like, the universe 1 minute and then Bigfoot the next, all while this werewolf's just kind of looming in the background.
Exactly.
It adds that layer of humor and unpredictability.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, it's so Rogan,
Totally. And as the show kept growing, the guest list started to shift too, right? It wasn't just comedians anymore. Suddenly it's scientists, authors, all these different experts.
Yeah. And, I think you can really see Rogan's curiosity in those choices. He's not afraid to explore any topic, really.
I love that.
And I think that resonates with, someone like you, who's always eager to learn new things, new perspective.
Oh, absolutely. It's like his curiosity became contagious or something. Okay, so then comes the big move, right? Texas. And that amazing pill-shaped studio. Talk about a statement.
That studio, I mean, it was a game changer, for sure, visually. And the sound was incredible.
Yeah.
That pill shape wasn't just for looks. It was designed for the acoustics to get that perfect sound quality.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It shows how much Rogan values that listening experience, and his dedication to really crafting the podcast.
It really does. But then he changes it up again. More relaxed studio, big desk, starry ceiling. It's like he went back to comfort as a priority. Do you think that shift in studio meant there were changes happening in the content too?
That's an interesting thought. Maybe after trying the super modern high production feel, he just wanted something more grounded, more intimate, because that informality, that feeling of just hanging out, chatting, that's always been part of JRE, right? Maybe that studio change was a way to get back to that.
I can see that. Now let's talk numbers for a second, because whoa, as of today, November 8th, 2024, it's 2,469 episodes. That translates to, get this, over 6,524 hours.
Yeah, to put that in perspective, that's like 272 days of nonstop Joe Rogan. Imagine listening for 9 months straight.
Intense. And just for the real JRE fans out there, the longest episode is over 5 hours. Episode 1530 with Duncan Trussell.
Wow, that's dedication.
Definitely a marathon listening session.
What strikes me is just this sheer volume of information and all those perspectives that have been shared on the show.
And speaking of perspectives, over 11,139 different guests have been on.
That's a lot of people.
It's an incredible network.
It is. Yeah. But it makes you think about, representation.
Yeah.
Because when you look at the numbers, it's about 89% male guests and only 11% female guests.
Yeah, that is something to think about. It reflects that bigger conversation happening everywhere, right? About inclusivity, diversity in podcasting. Makes you wonder, what are the factors there, But is it who Rogan is drawn to in his own circles? Or is it a more conscious choice in how he picks guests?
It's tough to say. It's a complex issue, definitely, with no easy answers.
Yeah.
Maybe, a future deep dive for us could be to look at the bigger picture of podcasting demographics and what we can do to make things more inclusive.
That's a great idea. Now, on to the guest list champions. I know you love a good stat.
Oh, absolutely. So including those fight companions, Brendan Schaub takes the top spot. A whopping 93 appearances.
Oh.
But if we're just talking, non-fight content, the crown goes to Ari Shaffir with 67.
All right, I'm intrigued.
Now, there's a challenge for you. Who is Ari Shafir, and what makes him such a perfect fit for JRE?
Okay, challenge accepted.
I like it.
And then there's YouTube, right? All those viral JRE moments, the top 10 most watched episodes there, have a combined, wait for it, 410 million views.
That's crazy.
Mind-blowing.
It really shows you the power of online video and Rogan's ability to reach such a huge audience.
Totally. And holding that champion title, Elon Musk's first appearance back in 2018, 69 million views.
It's fascinating, isn't it, to think about why that one resonated so much. Was it just seeing Elon in a casual setting? Or was it the topics? AI, space travel, things that capture everyone's imagination.
I think it was a combination. Honestly, you've got Elon Musk, this larger-than-life innovator, sitting down with Joe Rogan, who's known for those really deep, unfiltered conversations, and they're talking about the future. It's exciting, but also a little unsettling, like a glimpse into what might be.
Yeah, I get that. And the other names in that top 10, they're interesting too. Bob Lazar, Donald Trump, Jordan Peterson. It shows just how wide JRE's appeal really is.
Yeah.
And how Rogan's built this platform where he can have these compelling conversations with people from all walks of life.
It's true.
It's a real testament to his interviewing style, don't you think?
Oh, definitely. He has this way of putting people at ease, and then you get these authentic moments. And then, of course, there's the elephant in the room, the impact JRE has had on politics.
Yeah, you can't ignore that. Rogan has become, whether he meant to or not, a significant figure in the political world.
And it's fascinating how his interviews with, people like Trump, they give you this unfiltered access that you just don't get from traditional media.
Exactly. It's a totally new way for people to engage with politics.
And it's important to say, we're not endorsing any side here. It's about understanding how JRE has influenced the way people consume and process political information.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing that shift in how we get our news.
Now, the thing is, JRE has been going strong for over 15 years. This isn't a fad. It's changed podcasting itself.
And what's amazing is that Rogan is constantly evolving. He's never complacent. He's always refining the show, trying new things, pushing boundaries.
It's inspiring, really, always striving to make JRE the best it can be. So that brings us to the big question, right? What's next for JRE? Can it keep going at this level?
Well, he's already achieved what, most people would never even dream of. Huge audience, the deal with Spotify, the freedom to do whatever he wants, really.
So what's left? What can he conquer?
Well, he could definitely use his platform to advocate for causes. He could become more political or maybe go deeper into documentaries like that recent series on psychedelics.
Oh, right.
What do you think he'll do next?
Honestly, no idea. But that's what keeps it interesting. He keeps us guessing.
He does.
Never settles for the status quo. Okay, so we've covered a lot here. Basement to global phenomenon.
Quite a journey.
But at its core,
It's still about that conversation, that genuine, unfiltered conversation.
it is. And you know what that makes me think?
What's that? Has Rogan become too influential? He's just one guy with a microphone, but he's reached this incredible level of power and reach. It makes you wonder about the responsibility that comes with that.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's like he started out recording these casual conversations with friends, and now he's interviewing presidents and having a real impact on public opinion. It's a fascinating evolution.
It really is.
What really stood out to me from all this research, the sheer variety of guests he's had on. We're talking Elon Musk talking about space travel 1 minute, and then deep dives into consciousness and psychedelics the next. It's all over the map.
Right. And I think that's what makes JRE so unique. Rogan's not afraid to explore any topic, no matter how controversial or fringe it might be. And that open-mindedness is a big part of his appeal. He's not afraid to ask the questions that other people might shy away from.
It's like he's created this intellectual playground where anything goes. It's not about being right or wrong. It's about exploring ideas and challenging assumptions, which, let's be honest, is pretty refreshing in today's world.
Absolutely. And we can't forget the impact Rogan has had on the podcasting world itself. His success has paved the way for countless other podcasters, showing that there's a huge appetite for these long-form, in-depth conversations.
He's like the godfather of podcasting.
Yeah, I like that.
But let's circle back to that question of influence for a second. Do you think there are any potential downsides to having someone like Rogan wield so much power? It's a lot of responsibility.
It's definitely a double-edged sword. On one hand, he's giving a platform to voices that might not otherwise be heard. He's shaking things up and encouraging people to think critically, which is always a good thing.
But on the other hand,
There's the risk that his platform could be used to spread misinformation or harmful ideas. And because he's not a journalist, he's not bound by those same standards of fact-checking or objectivity.
Right.
It's up to the listener to be discerning.
That's a crucial point. Listeners have to be critical consumers of information no matter who's delivering it, even Joe Rogan.
Exactly. And I think Rogan himself would agree with that. He's often said that he's not an expert on everything. He's just a guy asking questions.
Yeah, I've heard him say that.
So it's really more about facilitating the conversation. And it's up to the listener to form their own opinions and do their own research.
That's the beauty of JRE, right? It's not about being spoon-fed information. It's about engaging in a dialogue and grappling with complex ideas. It's about challenging your own assumptions and being open to different perspectives.
Exactly.
Okay, so where do we go from here? What does the future hold for Joe Rogan and the JRE? It feels like he's already conquered so much.
Well, he has, hasn't he? It's amazing what he's built. He has a massive, dedicated audience, fantastic deal with Spotify, and the freedom to pursue whatever projects he's passionate about. So the question is, what's next?
What's left to conquer?
Maybe he'll shift gears completely, become a political activist, or focus on producing more documentaries? Who knows?
It's hard to say, but I have a feeling he's not done shaking things up. He's always experimenting, always pushing boundaries, and I think that's what keeps people coming back for more.
Oh, for sure.
Now, before we move on, I wanted to touch on something you mentioned earlier, those top 10 most watched JRE episodes on YouTube. They've racked up over 410 million views, which is just incredible.
It really is a staggering number.
And you know what's fascinating? The most watched episode isn't an interview with a celebrity or a politician. It's the one with Bob Lazar.
Ah, yes, Bob Lazar, the man who claims to have worked on reverse engineering alien technology at a secret government facility.
I know, right? It's definitely one of the more controversial episodes.
For sure.
I mean, I'm not saying I believe his story, but you can't deny that it's captured people's imaginations.
Absolutely. It speaks to our fascination with the unknown, with the possibility of extraterrestrial life. And it raises some interesting questions about government secrecy and the things that might be hidden from the public.
Like, is it really all just conspiracy theories?
Right. It's intriguing.
And it makes me wonder if this is part of a larger trend, you know?
What do you mean?
Are we seeing a shift away from traditional news and information sources towards more unconventional or even fringe content?
That's a fascinating question. And, I think there might be something to that. People seem increasingly disillusioned with mainstream media and are looking for alternative sources of information.
Yeah.
And Rogan, with his open-minded approach and willingness to platform unconventional guests, seems to be filling that void.
Absolutely. He's created this space where people feel like they can hear things they won't hear anywhere else, things that challenge the official narrative, things that make them think differently. And in a world where we're constantly bombarded with information, I think that's incredibly appealing.
I agree.
It's like he's tapped into this hunger for authenticity, for raw and unfiltered conversations. People want to feel like they're part of the dialogue, not just passive consumers of information.
Exactly. And Reagan empowers them to be active participants.
Yeah.
He's not afraid to ask the tough questions, to challenge the status quo, and to explore ideas that might make some people uncomfortable.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes a good conversation, right? It's about expanding our horizons, considering different perspectives, and maybe even changing our minds. But it's also a lot of responsibility for Rogan. He's not just entertaining, he's influencing people's worldviews.
You're absolutely right. He's walking this fine line between entertainment and influence. And I think that's what makes him so intriguing. It's not always clear where the line is, and that's part of the conversation, too.
It's true. It's a bit of a paradox, isn't it? He's built this platform where he can have these deep, meaningful conversations about important topics, but he's also not bound by any kind of journalistic code of ethics. It's up to the listener to be aware of that and to approach everything with a critical eye.
Exactly. That's why it's crucial for listeners to remember that Rogan is not the ultimate authority. He's a facilitator, a provocateur, someone who sparks conversations. But it's up to us, as listeners, to engage critically with what he's presenting and to form our own opinions.
Okay, so to bring it back to you and your deep dive into the Joe Rogan Experience, what's your biggest takeaway? What's the one thing that you'll be pondering long after this conversation is over?
I think what fascinates me most is this question of responsibility. Rogan has built this incredible platform, but what are his obligations to his listeners? How does he balance the need for entertainment with the potential impact of his words? And how can listeners navigate this complex landscape of information and misinformation, especially when it's coming from someone they trust and enjoy listening to.
Those are great questions, and ones that I don't think have easy answers, but they're definitely worth thinking about. And who knows, maybe your next deep dive will involve actually listening to some JRE episodes yourself. You've got 6,500 hours of content to choose from.
You never know. I wouldn't rule it out. After all this research, I'm definitely curious to hear some of these conversations for myself.
I get it. It's hard to resist. Well, on that note, I think we've done a pretty thorough job of unpacking the Joe Rogan Experience. From basement beginnings to global empire, it's been an incredible journey.
It really has. And I'm sure the story is far from over. Joe Rogan is a force to be reckoned with, and it's going to be interesting to see where he goes from here.
Absolutely. So, to our listener out there, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope we've given you some food for thought and maybe even sparked a little curiosity about the world of podcasting and the power of conversation.
And remember, always keep learning, keep questioning, and keep exploring. There's a whole world of fascinating ideas out there just waiting to be discovered.
Until next time. Yeah, it's like he's tapped into this need we have to know what's really going on, even if it's kind of scary or like changes how we see things. I think that's why those episodes like the Bob Lazar one, they just BLOWUP.
Oh, totally. It's the
Wow.
same thing that makes us love conspiracy theories, right?
Mhm.
Or anything unexplained. We want those glimpses behind the curtain, those little hints that maybe there's more out there.
Exactly. And Rogan's not afraid to go there. He'll have those guests ask those questions, even if it pisses people off.
Yeah.
It takes like real guts, and people respect that.
It does. It really does. It shows he's being genuine, committed to showing all those different viewpoints, even the ones that most people wouldn't touch.
So, okay, how do we like square that with the whole misinformation thing? If Rogan's not a journalist, not doing fact checks and all that, how do listeners know what to believe?
That's where you got to be smart,
Yeah.
Critical thinking, that's the key. Rogan's show, it's entertainment first. It's a starting point. It's not the end of the story.
Right. It's like a launch pad. He gives you the ideas, the guests, the different angles, but then it's your job to go deeper.
Exactly. Do your own research, come to your own conclusions.
Which is honestly a skill we all need these days, with so much information flying around.
Totally. You got to be able to evaluate, think for yourself.
So it's not about believing Rogan blindly. It's about taking what he gives you and using it to learn, to grow,
I love that. That's what makes JRE so cool. It's not passive. It's an invitation to think critically, have real dialogue.
It's like he's saying, here's some food for thought, now go chew on it.
And I think that's powerful, really powerful. It's about giving listeners the power to go find knowledge, find understanding.
So, big picture, as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one thing our listeners should take away? What should they be thinking about out there in the world?
I think the biggest thing is JRE. It's a snapshot of the whole media landscape. It shows us the good AD, the bad. We have access to so much info, but can we trust it? That's on us, each of us, to figure out,
It's true.
build those critical thinking skills, be a little skeptical.
And curious. Don't be afraid to look at things from different angles, even if it challenges what you believe,
Couldn't agree more. Have those tough conversations, ask the hard questions, never stop learning, never stop growing.
Well said. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive. It's been fascinating. Joe Rogan, what a story.
It has been, and I'm sure there's more to come.
Oh, definitely. And to our listener, thanks for diving deep with us. Stay curious. Keep those conversations going.
Absolutely. Until next time,